Hello, friends. As we look out at the world, as we look back over history, we see this constant recurring process of conflict, of one culture competing with another culture, with the righteousness with which we identify with our culture and our social organizations or organizing systems. When we look at warfare and invasion, economic struggle for supremacy, military struggle for power and supremacy. And we see the atrocities, the cruelty, the misery brought about, that it affects so many people. And it's really hard to comprehend. It's hard to put yourself there in their position when their homes are ripped away from them, when they're starving, when they're losing or seeing the loss of family members all around them. It's unspeakable suffering, yet we do it, and we do it, and we do it. And obviously, the world religions haven't found an answer to this. They end up being caught up in the problem. So we have to ask the question, is there an answer? Does consciousness work, which I prefer over the notion of spiritual work? Does consciousness work have an answer? And it does, but it's not the answer people want to hear. But I'm going to try to describe an event in my life that happened early on in my awakening process. And from that event, tie that to what we understand from quantum physics about particularly the strange interaction over distance, what spooky interaction over distance, Einstein called it, how one particle and another particle that have been connected in some way can then divert to different places, different parts of the universe, not within the same material system that they started in. And yet when something happens to one of them, the exact same thing happens to the other one. How is it that we have this sense that one thing, one place can influence something else somewhere else? And Krishnamurti, famous spiritual teacher of the 20th century, asked toward the end of his life, and he was really quite pessimistic and even angry. He would say over and over again, "Why won't you change?" Now, quite honestly, from my point of view, he was a remarkable man and he lived a remarkable process. But I don't think he understood the nature of change, even the kind of change he had undergone, that made him the man he was. This is very different, the way I'm going to talk about this, than the notion of a spiritual avatar, as he was considered, who gives up that role and just becomes a spiritual, philosophical prophet, and a remarkable one. So let me go to this personal experience I had. Going back in memory as far as I'm going now, can't testify to how accurately I'm describing this. But sometime in the very early years after I had the awakening event that I've chronicled in my book, The Black Butterfly, and I've talked about in different ways over the years in my programs and here, I was made aware of a woman, a clairvoyant channel, who was traveling from overseas. I think she was British. She had a man with her who was her grounding person. And she had been traveling all over and now was in the San Francisco Bay Area. And she was, prophesying, disaster, one kind or another. And she did this in a most extraordinary way. People would ask her questions. She'd be in the home of someone she didn't know. And she would then, in a trance state, direct the questioner or someone in the house to go to a bookshelf and find a specific book. She would describe which shelf and which book, how many books from the left-hand side of the shelf, and then would say, go to a certain page. They'd open the page, and what they read on that page was eerily responsive to the nature of the question. So one of the questions I heard there was, are these predictions of California falling into the sea? Are they of immediate danger? Should we be considering moving to Montana or something like that? Now, maybe you'd laugh now in 2025, but in the 1980s, the New Age world in California, maybe everywhere, was so into imaginary and fantastic kinds of beliefs and fears and worries. Anyway, I was in the room, had been invited, and I'm watching this phenomenon that I just described of her answering questions, people going to a book, and it wasn't remarkable how the page that was read or the paragraph or the sentence in the page that she had suggested seemed like a real answer. So this is, when you're in front of a phenomenon like that, then automatically you think, well, this is remarkable and real. And it is, but it's real in a context. It's real within a dynamic. My experience was, as I was sitting there, that my solar plexus was tying in a knot, pulsing, tying in a knot. And the sensation was fear. Fear, but it wasn't my fear. It was the atmosphere. It was the field of the people there, the field they were all caught in. And at a certain point, after many questions, several questions by other people, I asked if I could ask a question. And when they said yes, I said, can I ask it silently in my mind? And again, she answered yes. Well, the man that was with her looked at her and said, yes, you can. So in my mind, I formulated a question. Here is the question. I said, if the energy right now in which this whole process is happening moved to the heart, would any of your predictions come true? No, remember, I asked this silently in my mind. I formulated it in my mind. I didn't know whether telepathy could happen or couldn't happen. I just didn't want to say it out loud. And the woman wrote down on a piece of paper, the same way she wrote down which book to go to. She wrote down 3 words: would not ensue. So my question, if the energy here in which we're all sitting were to shift to the heart, would any of these predictions be valid? Would they happen? And her answer, would not ensue. Of course, this had all happened in silence. So then I asked, would it be okay if I tell the people in the room, 20 or so people, what I had asked? And again, I was given permission. And so I told them, and as the moment they heard the question, and they had already heard the answer, they just didn't know what the answer was, what the question was, that the words would not ensue were the answer to. At that instant that they grasped what the question was and what the answer was, the energy in the room shifted. It literally went in me to the heart. I didn't try to make it go to the heart. I wasn't running from the sensation in my solar plexus. But the collective field had shifted to an entirely different level. Let's call it heart level. And all the fear was gone in that room, like someone had just washed it away. And the woman leaped up and became hysterical and was looking at her chair and pointing at her chair. And she said, it's a commode, I'm sitting on a commode, literally. And he had to take her into another room to calm her down. And that's all I really remember of that. I don't remember if there was discussion after that or I said anything more. Okay, so now let's step forward into this incredible world of quantum physics, and where we know that if you have a group of electrons and they're in association with each other, and then you put them in a beam splitter, and you send one going in one direction and the other in the other direction, whatever particle you do this with. If you interact further down in the experiment with one of them, the other one automatically registers the same thing. It doesn't happen by information travel because it happens instantly, so faster than the speed of light. In fact, it could happen anywhere in the universe. Presumably, if those particles were tracked a light year away in one direction and a light year away in another direction, and you interacted with one of them, both of them, the other one would instantly change. So nothing goes faster than the speed of light. Nothing in a wire, in a fiber optic device, approaches the speed of light. Our biggest accelerators can get to 90, a little over, maybe 91% of the speed of light with tremendous energy moving very, very small things. But we can't get to the speed of light because the sheer amount of energy it takes to reach the speed of light for any material thing is beyond our ability to do. So how does information travel? Is it simultaneous? Is it telepathic? But I don't think that's the case. It's as if information spreads like a wave, or the condition. So let's see if I can put it another way. The information, the wave function that determines the nature of the particles going out into the world. They are, in one way you measure them, light is particles, and in another way it's a wave. It's a ever-spreading function. It's like a balloon. You blow it up, blow it up, blow it up. But if you touch it with a pin in one point, everything everywhere changes all at once. That's a good analogy. In that room with that woman, the coherence of the field when fear, solar plexus energy, fear was the dominating energy, was a world of anxiety, a world of survival, a world of self-protection, a world of self-involvement, a world of distrust. And that is the very nature of consciousness at the level of power. At the level of power where there is me and you. And if I'm stronger than you and push you, you fall backwards. If you're stronger than me and push me, I fall backwards. And it's fundamental distrust. Because if someone has more power than you, then they can use that power against you, right? China's economic power can be used against the United States. United States military power can be used against this. Russia's military power is dominating Ukraine. And the Israeli IDF are bombarding the Palestinians. And one power over another, distrust everywhere, and it's completely coherent. It's rationalized. It's historically justified. I mean, the right-wing religious people in Israel believe that that land there, all of it, is given to them by God. It is historically there. It's given to them by God. That is an insane belief that God gives you anything. God transcends everything. So it's madness. Yet everyone is coherent in that madness. But back to my little example. When the balloon popped in that room and everything went to the heart, what was coherent was love, joy, relief, trust. When we move to the intelligence of the heart, metaphorically, literally, when we move to a different plane or level of consciousness where the dominating principle is love, then every entity is an otherness that's part of an interconnected, ever dynamic whole. Nothing has power over anything else. Everything is in reciprocal, unimaginably complex relationship with everything else. And the underlying energy is trust. And the underlying state is tranquility, peace, a sheer sense of the rightness and goodness of all things. Gratitude, just gratitude, a sense of the body of joy, the body of enjoyment. But that plane of consciousness, that is a different level of consciousness. And there is no way that I know of that the balloon, that is the power level of consciousness based in fear and based in survival and based in distrust, as ancient as that has been, can ever go pop except in you and in an individual, except when you're in the field of someone who has already been placed, awakened, enlightened into that level. It's not unlike the Tibetan Buddhist notion of bardos when you die. If you can go into the pure white light of consciousness without quality or characteristic, the pure, Advaita, they would call it the non-dual. There's so many words, but you could also call it God, though God tends to be a personalized expression of that world, and therefore God is considered a thing that does, as opposed to a beingness out of which all emerges. If you're unable to accept the white light, then you have another opportunity. Eventually, you choose a plane of consciousness that you come into in the Bardo concept in the Tibetan Buddhism. And once you're in that plane, everything's coherent. Rationality, history, anticipation, future, all of that is one coherence, justifying everything. Intellect justifying everything, rationality, mathematics proving this, economics proving that, or demonstrating this, or psychology expressed completely as an expression of the separate self, ego, and all of the different ways that ego can operate in an aberrant way. And awareness, even mindfulness awareness practice, which is crucial. Awareness itself still is kind of an instrument of the ego structure that wants to learn to quiet itself and calm itself and ground itself, but it is not a fundamental process of change. That fundamental process is mysterious, but I know it. I know it. It's happened to me, and I've seen it happen to others, temporarily or permanently. And that is the only way that fundamental change can ever happen. There is no way you can live your life spending time doing good things, and good things will be good for you to do, but they will not change that plane of consciousness. We're all inside a collective body that is operating in a domain of power and control and domination. And we think information will give us power. We think supercomputers joining each other together in tremendous AI is going to give us power. Power to do this, power to make life better here or there, power to deceive us in every imaginable way. We're just running around, ever advancing in our intellectual understanding and technological application of what we learn through our inquiry and examination and research, but we cannot change. And so, Krishnamurti, why won't you change? The answer is because you cannot do it by yourself. There is an effort that's required, and then grace. And part of that effort is to treat yourself with such ultimate gentleness and calmness and quietness, no matter what your life situation is, to keep saying yes, yes, yes. And it ain't so easy when you're in a situation where what you're saying yes to is terrifying or scary, and your mind is jumping into the future, and it's in the past justifying this or remembering that, and it's judging you, and it's judging everyone and everything else. My mandala, my head's moving in the motion. Past, future, me, you, just bouncing, bouncing, bouncing. But if you can be a yes, if you can say, and this too, every fabrication of your mind, and this too, every fabrication that closes your heart, every fabrication that shuts you down from being really present with another, being really present to yourself, then sometimes, suddenly by grace, maybe through a dream, just an energy happens and you start to awaken, you shift states, the balloon pops and a new level is there. But here's the interesting thing. The balloon imagery is not adequate because when the balloon pops, the balloon is finished. You still continue in the power level inside of you. You still continue with the distrust. You still have that. You have to decide. Now something is awakened. When I was in that room with those people, what had awakened in me made me know two fundamental different levels of consciousness, the whole level of power, control, distrust, domination, manipulation, one coherent level: survival, psychological survival, identity survival, survival. And then I knew this other level that I had been brought to and was a doorway for, and I remain a doorway for it, you know. But I'm just an ordinary guy living my life also. And so look out at the world in the wonderment of it all, and the wonderment of your being, and stop being angry and upset and choosing sides and hating Trump or loving Trump, or just let it all go. There's nothing in that for you except more suffering. You can't save your life through consciousness work. You can't protect yourself from mad people, people crazed in extremes of third chakra power dynamics. You know, there is madness in the world. There is horrible violence. You can't protect yourself from that. You have to protect yourself from your own self-attack, from your own indulgence of things that close your heart. To actually believe a conspiracy theory and be angry and distrusting and it's madness. If you see it in anyone, love them, but you can't change them. And if you have it in yourself, you wouldn't be listening to me. But if you know a part of yourself that can go there, then don't go. Stop. Stop. Change can only happen because we decide that love is the fundamental ground of reality, and that the level in which love is the coherence of all things, the coherence of love is a right relationship, everything to everything else, all the time, instant by instant, everywhere in the universe. Call it a wave form, but the wave is a coherence of relationship, of connection, everywhere in the universe. And nature is the most profound demonstrator of it. All of the argument about DEI is just what nature automatically does, is what diversity, equity, inclusion. That's nature. That's nature. I've talked about this in another one of my videos like this. So the only place where DEI is not nature is when you say, include me, it's my identity, include this identity, include that. Then you're right back in the power, distrust, manipulation, control, fear-based, survival-based world, imposing what is natural to nature on other human beings, instead of letting human society and human culture be obedient to nature. We could do that, but it takes intelligence, and it takes an absolute commitment. You may not awaken like I did, and a part of me still is fast asleep. But I don't know if it's fast asleep, but what I'm not conscious of, I don't know. And it never ends. It's not like I'm awake now completely. It's evolving. It's more and more delicious all the time. But don't go anymore. Don't go anymore. Stop it. Just cease it in yourself. Take the risk of loving love. Take the risk of abandoning yourself to love. Don't worry about what love means. If your heart closes, if your voice gets judgmental and attacking, if you're thinking that way, let go, relax, release. Start now. This breath, relax, release. Every moment is new. Every moment is new. And in love, every moment is new in the coherence of love. It's a complete information system, transcendent of everything that has to do with survival and power. Beautiful. Wondrous. Thank you. Blessings.